I want to welcome you to the Retro Rogues Live. Please pay attention to our warning graphic. It states that the Retro Rogues Live show is intended for an adult audience and not intended for children under the age of 13. Parental discretion is advised. Hey, again, and welcome to the show. On tonight's episode of the Retro Rogues Live, we're doing Collector's Corner. We are going to be talking about, got an interesting comic book pick for you this evening. Got some trading card picks. We're going to be talking about some Cobra Kai news. We're going to be talking about Joker 2. I'm going to be talking about Ultraman. A lot of pop culture, streaming wars, a lot of other fun things. All that and so much more on tonight's probably news-packed episode of the Retro Rogues Live. My name is Dave Beatty. I'm one of your hosts. For the last 30 years, I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer. Worked on a lot of fun things that some people have heard of, such as Batman, Incorporated, Justice League of America, and even Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. But enough about that. I want to welcome back my co-host. This was Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks who'll be watching or listening at home some of the fun things you have worked on as a creative professional.
Yes, hello, everyone. I'm Eric Alexander, also known as Bass God 14. That's Bass God 14, Bass God 14. That's Bass God, like a bass guitar. And I am the chief financial officer of a small production company in Arizona called Bad Bob Productions. Recently, we were actually filming in LA. Came back from LA on Monday. Came out there, we're just out there for the weekend. 2 intense days of shooting, and I am happy to say that we got the shots that we needed to get.
Cool deal. All right. So we're going to start off tonight's show. We're going to start off by the comic book picks. We're going to start by talking about Ultraman. That's why we're going to start off by talking about Ultraman. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up this news article to kind of set up what it is I'm going to be talking about here. All right. So this article is coming from Variety. This actually ran quite a few days ago, but it says Netflix developing Ultraman animated feature with an all-new story. This was an exclusive story over on Variety. This is by Adam B. Very. I always wonder sometimes if these are stage names. So we're going to read just a little bit of this. We're not going to get too far into it, just a little bit of this. It says for 55 years, Ultraman has been one of Japan's A-list superheroes, defending the planet from alien kaiju and inspiring all manner of global pop culture, from the Power Rangers to Paul Rudd's Ant-Man suit. But while the character has a loyal following outside of Japan, Ultraman has never become a massive crossover phenomenon at the scale of Godzilla or Pokemon. Netflix is hoping to change that. The streamer is partnering with Tsubara Productions to develop Ultraman, a CG animated feature film aimed at bringing a new, wider audience to the beloved silver-suited character. Shannon Tendall, an animator who's worked on Coraline and Kubo and the Two Strings, will make his feature directorial debut with the project from a script he wrote with Kubo's screenwriter Mark Haynes. John Aoshima, DuckTales Gravity Falls, will co-direct. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing any names incorrectly. It's not intentional. All right, so we've got here this news. This has been around for a little bit. But what's interesting, what's been happening on the comic book side because of this, and this is one of the few times I'm going to talk about someone else's show in this context. There's a top 10 show when they talk about comic books that are popping, right? Like, top 10 sales for the week, whatever. What's interesting is what one of these books has been. And the book that has been popping has actually been Ultraman #1. Now, the thing about Ultraman #1 is there's a new Marvel series right now that is available that I'd been wanting to check out, but honestly, I just kind of missed it. But the book that's popping is actually an older Ultraman #1. So this is the book right here. This was actually published by, I think it was Harvey Comics back in 1993. This is Ultraman #1. This book, as with all Collector's Corner picks, what we try to do is we want to keep it to $20 or less, $20 or less, right? So if you're a collector, it's a fun book to collect. If it's a speculator, if you want to buy something, get it graded and hold on to, this is an interesting possible option. And it's a little bit of a different option. But Ultraman #1 has actually been on a lot of people's top 10 lists right now, this particular one. And it's been interesting to see kind of the speculation and the excitement actually around Ultraman and this particular book. So I selected this for our pick for this evening. We're only going to do one comic pick tonight, but we're going to pick Ultraman #1 from 19 $93, and as of this show, you can still get raw copies of this for basically $10 or less. So if you want to get into that speculation game, if you're just a collector and you love Ultraman, here's kind of a fun way to check out this character. And this is kind of neat because there's not been a lot of Ultraman comic books in the US. So this is a really cool one. It got a cool Ken Stacy cover, and this is our pick for this evening, Ultraman #1. What do you think about it, Eric?
I love the cover. I absolutely love that cover. That is some amazing cover art, and I'm one of those guys because I generally collect comics casually. Like, I'm not a completist or anything like that, but generally, like speaking, I judge a book by its cover, especially when it comes to a comic book, and I love this one. I am curious about your toy there, because obviously I'm a toy guy. I am a little bit curious about the toy that you're showing us right now, Dave.
Okay, so this was, I think in the 90s, they actually released a series of plastic Ultraman. Let me pull the graphic down. Plastic Ultraman toys that you could get some of the kaijus from the show. And this is the Ultraman figure. And it actually came with the little guy who morphs into Ultraman, the little science police guy. And it was kind of a neat thing. And I just really liked the toys back in the day. And this has been one of my favorite little purchases I've ever made, because he stands really easy. He looks really cool. He looks, the light's a little harsh on him because he's silver. But the thing that's neat is that, he looks just like the classic Ultraman, He doesn't have a lot of articulation, but, what I do is I'm always just standing him around somewhere, and he just looks really cool. I don't know what you could, what this goes for on eBay or anything. I can't imagine it sells for too much. But if you're an Ultraman collector, you like action figures, search this one out. I can't remember the name of the company that made these. Trying to see if it says on here. Yeah, but this is from 1990, everybody. 1990. I always just had it on the show because I thought it'd be fun to just Ultraman. Anyhow.
It's definitely I think it's really cool, and I'm not by any means like a huge Ultraman fan or anything like that, but I do like the look of the character. I'm familiar with it. I was not familiar that Netflix was doing a show. I actually didn't know that. So that I always think that's kind of like a good solid, almost no-brainer kind of pick when we know that a show is coming out or a movie, and we know that that this particular property is going to get some additional media attention. And of course, Netflix is about as mainstream as you can get these days. That there's going to be a bump. You just know that.
Yeah, and like I said, I like it #1 just because it's kind of fun. Because this is not an indie title in the way that we think of indie titles right now, but it's not a mainstream publisher either. You know what I mean? When this originally came out, and it's just really kind of a fun, cool book. It's just always been a great character, and I thought it'd be kind of neat to have this as an option and a pick for the comic pick for tonight's episode of the Collector's Corner. So, all right.
If anybody's out there in the Rogue Gallery, make sure that you let your comments be known and what you think about these picks as well. I do see that Hollywood Jackson's the house, so he says, "Hi guys." Hi, Hollywood Jackson. We appreciate you coming out tonight.
All right, so let's go ahead and segue in our trading card picks and keep the fun train going. So this is going to be our first trading card pick for this evening. This is from 1991. This is MPAL. This is the G.I. Joe Real American Hero. This is card number 28. This is Storm Shadow. Now, just like last week, there are comic image cards that predate this particular series by MPAL. But the reason I personally like these cards is because, for my mind anyway, these are kind of more of a rookie card. You've got a little picture on the back, you've got stats, you've got some bio information. So it kind of more fulfills, in my mind anyway, what I think of as a rookie card. Again, makes sense why I'm picking this one. Again, we have the Snake Eyes movie we know that's coming. There's the movie trailer that's out right now. Of course, the connection between Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes, because I think that was the Ashikaga, whatever it's called, Ninja Clan, right? That they're both members of. I don't think that's necessarily considered a spoiler for the movie. I mean, it's this. I think most people know Snake Eyes.
It was in the article.
Well,
It was
there
in
you
the
go.
article
All
we
right.
talked about, a couple weeks ago
Yeah.
when we were first talking about the first images from Snake Eyes.
So the thing I like about this one, again, this is Storm Shadow. This is Snake Eyes, main arch nemesis, his rival, if you will. And this is basically, as far as I could tell, based on my research, this is Storm Shadow's rookie card right here. And again, same thing, $20 or less, you can get raw copies of this card relatively inexpensively. If you are looking to get pre-graded cards, I did find some pre-graded cards that are available kind of in a couple different places. They're running about 100, 150, whether it's SGA or PSA. So if you want to go ahead and buy an already graded card and make that investment, you can go that route if you want. But I prefer to get the raw card, and even though there's issues of getting things graded, just wait for the right opportunity and get it graded. Again, I'm looking at this from a collector's standpoint. If you like Snake Eyes, if you're excited about the movie, this is a really neat card to own. This is like having that first appearance of Storm Shadow in a comic book, but it takes up less room. It's not quite the investment at the moment. If you want to purchase it and have it, and it's really kind of fun. You can get it slabbed and graded, display it, kind of a fun thing. So that's our first card pick for this evening is, again, 1991 Impel G.I. Joe number 28, Storm Shadow. What do you think about this choice, Eric?
Well, I have a question for you that I forgot to ask you when you were talking about Snake Eyes last week. Do the
All right.
Impel cards have the same problems that the Marvel Impel cards have as far as the wild variety and the quality of the card in terms of, we've talked about that the Marvel Impel cards vary in quality radically, loose and all that kind of stuff because they did a poor job cutting them of all things. That there's some issues with the centering and things like that. And the Marvel Impel cards are notorious for that. Do the G.I. Joe Impel cards have that same problem as far as you know?
I think, to be honest with you, Eric, I think most cards, especially go far enough back in time, are going to potentially have that problem from the manufacturing stage. So, as with all cards, it is best to understand. You want to look at the corners and make sure the corners look crisp and sharp. You want to make sure that the colors, like that it doesn't look like washed out necessarily, or like it looks like it's sun bleached or anything. So you want to make sure that the whites look as pearly white kind of as you can get them, or the color of white paper. And you want to pay attention to that centering. Sometimes when you're buying these cards on eBay or Mercari, it's kind of a little bit of a roll of the dice. You can ask for additional scans or additional images if you want to see it. But a lot of times for a card like this, you're only going to pay $4 or $5, maybe even less to get this card. So it's not a huge investment. But, you just want to inspect the images as best you can and try to make an informed decision. So you want to try and pick one that is well-centered. But, there is going to be that potential that you might buy that card and you get it and maybe it is a little off center, and you end up with like an 8, or a 7 instead of a 9. That's always the risk with anything that you buy raw, But the thing that's nice about buying raw, again, like I said, is you're looking at paying, $10 for this card or maybe even less, with shipping probably around $20. Again, that's our aim, right? Versus, again, like I said, you buy it pre-graded, it's going to set you back $100, $150. That's what it seems to be the going rate for this card. So I think it's worth the risk. But again, make sure those corners are sharp, make sure the colors look really nice and that they pop, and pay attention to the centering. But there's always going to be a little bit of a risk and a roll of the dice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally see that. I do like this this version of Storm Shadow, sort of the original version of Storm Shadow. I know that there is some there's some controversy out there as far as like some people do actually like the newer version of Storm Shadow, and I'm not even talking about whatever's out now. There was a redesign of Storm Shadow even during the initial line where they really changed the look. In fact, I have the figures somewhere. I wish I had them with me right now. I could show them to people and you could see the difference. And there's some people that really like the new one much more than this classic original version. I like the classic original version myself. I've always loved this character, even though I felt like, particularly in the cartoon, they didn't utilize him quite as well as I think they should have. They often had him beaten up by like Quick Kick of all people and things like that, who I think most people think was kind of a lame character. In fact, in the comic books, they treat Quick Kick with no respect whatsoever. I think he gets his ass kicked by Storm Shadow like left and right, like it's not even like a not even a competition. But in the cartoons, it was different. But they did do some fun stuff with Storm Shadow in the cartoons. They didn't make him like he was totally pathetic, like a lot of the other Cobras in the cartoons sometimes, who just kind of ran away and stuff like that. But I've always loved this character. Very classic ninja. I was always fascinated from the beginning. I remember getting the figure, as a kid and everything. But you can't go wrong with this pick, with the movie coming out. Whether the movie's good or bad, it's going to give attention. That like Dave was saying, this is something that once graded, it's a $150 card. So I think it's only going to go up.
And what's interesting too, if I remember correctly, in the cartoon, they always kind of had Storm Shadow early on, kind of more squared off against Spirit, right? Wasn't that the name of his? And I always thought that was really kind of cool, and in this day, or when we talk about diversity and all this other stuff, and I just thought it was really interesting. You got a ninja and Spirit who was a Native American Joe,
yes,
who was a really cool character, right? And it was always kind of neat to see those that was very typical. Yeah. So I've always loved all these characters. I just think they're all really cool. But Storm Shadow has always been one of my favorites, and I personally love the classic design too. That's why I say, in my mind, if you're looking to collect something, if you're excited about Snake Eyes, the Snake Eyes and the Storm Shadow trading card are really kind of a fun thing to go and pick up, because they're not going to cost you too much, and they're really kind of cool and neat. And again, it's a rookie card, in my mind anyway, based on my research. And the thing that's kind of fun about it too is, like I said, it's the same thing as having a number one, you know what I mean? But you're not quite, as heavily invested, but you're still kind of along for that ride, which I think is kind of fun.
I do want to acknowledge on that vein that we did get a comment on the previous episode where someone was mentioning the comic images as if we did not. Obviously, you are familiar with that, and these are your picks as the rookie card, and people can disagree. If you want to choose the comic image, as your rookie card or whatever, we understand that. But this is just our opinion, right? So we do encourage that debate, and we understand that collectors are always going to debate about everything, right. So it's just the way it is, So
well, and I did start off by saying I know there are comic image cards that predate this one. But like I said, just as with last time, in my mind anyway, I personally feel like that this is kind of more of a rookie card because in my mind anyway, you've got the bio picture on the back, you've got the stats. It's just more of a rookie card in my mind as opposed to a first appearance card. And that's how I've been trying to do this for those people who are watching who may be new to our show. That's kind of what I've been saying. Your first appearance is this, but then your rookie card in my mind is actually this. So yes. I know there are comic images out there, cards that predate these. And if you want to go and collect those, go right ahead. Those cards are not going to set you back a lot either. Collect all of them. Why not? I actually own a lot of the comic image cards in addition to this card as well. So, but just for me as a collector, if I'm recommending to you someone who saw the Snake Eyes, trailer, or you love these characters and you don't have a lot of these things already and you're looking to collect something, I would be of the opinion, start with this card first, because I feel like this is more the gem in my mind anyway. Again, that's just my recommendation. It's my pick. And that's why. And
if you like Storm Shadow with his actual mask on, here you go.
There you go. Yeah.
As opposed to the images we saw from the movie, because nobody can wear masks anymore. It's crazy.
Yeah. Talking about masks, let's go ahead and go to our next one. All right. So this is going to be our last card pick for this evening. This is from 1990. This is the Marvel MPAL line. This is card number 60. This is your Lord of Latveria. This is, of course, the great Dr. Doom. All right. So the reason I love this card, number one, is look at it. It looks cool as hell. And then secondly, it's just kind of neat. It's got that retro kind of vibe. It's not, Jack Kirby retro vibe, but it's just got that fun retro vibe. You've got the castle in the background. It's got the clenched fist. It's just a great looking card. Secondly, again, we do have, the excitement still kind of swirling around the MPAL Marvel trading cards, specifically the first line, the 1990 line. In my mind, based on what I'm seeing, I do still feel like this is a rookie card. There are probably cards that predate this. But again, this 1990 MPAL Marvel trading card line, in my mind, is going to go down as a classic. a lot of the really, really super early stuff is really expensive if you can even find it in decent condition. There are still copies of this card that you can go out and you can pick up, for around $20 or less. You can find them on Mercari and eBay and stuff like that, sometimes still in lots. So this is a really great card to pick up. When I think of classic Marvel characters, Doctor Doom is one of the most important villains. I remember being a kid growing up watching the Spider-Man cartoons, not the 60s cartoons, but the later ones. And it always seemed like they were trying to square off Doctor Doom against Spider-Man. And I've always loved this character, even though I know he's more a Fantastic Four villain. But I think of him just as an overarching major Marvel comics villain, one of the great comic, villains like Galactus, that kind of, presence, right? So that's why I picked this one. You can find graded copies of this, PSA, I saw 9 and 10. I mean, they're pretty pricey, if you want to go that route and you want to invest in it. I still like the idea of picking up a raw card. Again, same thing as Eric mentioned earlier, which is a good thing to keep in mind. Pay attention to those corners. Make sure those corners are crisp. They got to look so sharp and pointy that they can cut you, I think is the best way to think of it. You want to make sure the color reproduction on it is really good. You want vibrant colors. You want to make sure you've got really good, like almost like pearly whites. You want to make sure that white of that card is popping. And then again, pay attention to centering. Try to pick one that's centered. You do still run the risk when you buy raw that, someone may sell you something that's not exactly what you expect. So don't invest too heavily into it, in my mind anyway. But I definitely think this is, if you're a Marvel fan, if you're a classic Marvel fan or even a new Marvel fan, if you're looking for a way to collect, this is kind of fun. This is like having Doctor Doom's first appearance, but it's a rookie card in my mind anyway, based on my research. Again, I like it as rookie card because we got a picture, we got stats, we got bios. Again, in my mind, it's kind of more of a rookie card. That's why I make this pick. There are probably cards that predate it, but a lot of people, I think that they kind of feel like that this is the rookie card. So I'm going to lean into that as well. What do you think about this pick, Eric? Dr. Doom.
It's a great pick. It's a great pick. This is a classic character, very recognizable. The one thing about it, too, from an investment standpoint, is we haven't had an introduction of Dr. Doom to the MCU yet. We have had him on screen, in the Fantastic Four movies. But to me, when he comes to the MCU, that's going to be a huge event. And anything associated with Doctor Doom is going to go up in price. You're going to get that Marvel bump. So this is a pick where you can get ahead of that. You can get ahead of that bump because there isn't even anything announced as far as I know about Doctor Doom coming to the MCU. So we may be talking a decade from now. I don't know. We really don't know when they're going to finally get around to bringing Doctor Doom. So this could be a true investment piece as opposed to like a really speculative piece. That you might want to flip, especially once the show comes out, you get that Marvel bump, you cash in, and then you're done. This is one that you might just want to try to get, as inexpensive as you possibly can and hold on to it as a true investment and waiting for that Marvel bump when this thing is introduced to the MCU.
Yeah, like this is, and just so people know, this is our main pick for this evening. This is going to be the big one. This is definitely the one. If you're looking to collect, if you're interested in and maybe speculating, and again doing it the way I do it, I try to buy low, hopefully maybe sell high down the road. Timing the market, when to sell that item, right, and cash out is always kind of the trick. It's difficult to kind of time those kind of things. But again, too, it's important to remember I am a collector first, so you're talking about one of the most classic, Marvel villains that you can get. I actually have 3 what I think high grade copies of this that I'm actually planning to hopefully turn in to get graded at some point. Still kind of waiting, I think, for PSA, but
like
we'll see when we
else.
Get there. Yeah, but I just
everybody else.
But for me,
waiting for PSA.
Yeah, but for me, this is your classic quintessential Marvel villain. This is like your Magneto. You know what I mean? This is he's your major villain. So definitely take a look at again from 1990 MPAL. This is the Marvel Universe trading card number 60, Doctor Doom.
Great pick.
All right.
Great pick.
Cool.
Like I said, I think in a lot of ways just a no-brainer. We do have a comment from the
cool.
Rogues Gallery. We have a recommendation from the Rogues Gallery from Hollywood Jackson. So Hollywood Jackson says, check out the Joe Satriani Crystal Planet comic and Surfing with the Alien album. Really cool new comic and action figure with the Crystal Planet. I haven't heard of this, Hollywood, so I would like to check this out. Have you heard of this, Dave?
I think I'd seen a few things that Hollywood had actually been sharing actually on Facebook. I honestly, I've seen what you've been sharing, Hollywood. I haven't clicked on anything just yet, and I think didn't he do like a Silver Surfer song back in the day, or maybe I'm confused. I seem to remember there being. Well, I'm probably confused. I'm going to stop talking before I really get myself in trouble. But I've seen that Hollywood has been sharing that actually on Facebook, and it looks really cool. And I honestly, I need to check it out further. I just haven't done it yet. And this is a good example, Eric, because this is what we're talking about. Where we want to lean the show into is kind of more, independent. You know what I mean, kind of stuff. And yes. This is a totally new thing. Let's maybe we could do, Eric, is we could research it, look into it, and maybe we could actually talk about it actually on next week's Collector's Corner. Probably more.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. Cool. Definitely, if there's an action figure associated, I'm all over it. Definitely. And Hollywood did answer your question. He said yes, there was an entire album.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
You were right. He says yes, there's an entire album. So I also wanted to acknowledge that Jane's in the house. She's checking in to say hey. So it was good to see you. Thank you for checking out the show and commenting. And any of the rest of you out there, if you want to comment, if you have some ideas, even if you disagree with us, you're okay to do that on this show. You're allowed to disagree. So you're happy to come on here and debate that comic images thing to me all you want. I'm going to change my mind because I think these others are better cards. Just being dead honest. I mean, from a collector's standpoint, these picks I've made are much better cards. And I got all of them. I can pull them out and explain to you why I like them better. Plus the fact that just they're better card stock. I mean, the comic images cards, they're like flimsy. They're just like they bend really easy, and there's no color on the back, and it's like, it's okay. Yeah. But yeah, come on the show and debate me. Let's why not? So exactly. And Hollywood mentions that Joe is the Gandalf of guitar, and I don't think I disagree with you on that either, Hollywood. Definitely don't. Now, for my Collector's Corner segment, I actually have some breaking news, and this is one of those things. This is one of the reasons I'm still on Twitter and why I'm so active on Twitter, even though I think it is extremely toxic, quite frankly. But I have this news article that I came across because a Twitter friend of mine had this on his feed, and I was really shocked to see this because as some of you may know, I've been really pushing the Marvel Legends, the Kenner Marvel Legends specifically, which you have to specify that because Marvel Legends is such a huge toy line and everything like that. I've been really pushing the Kenner Marvel Legends because I like the retro styling. Basically it's like having a Star Wars figure, but it's a Marvel character. And also the price point. You can pick these up, in the wild at a store for $10. And you really can't beat that right now. Even Star Wars action figures like the retro line, they're like $12 or $13. I think like $12.99 actually. So, and they're the same type of figure, same plastic and all that stuff. So this is from Wave 4. This is like kind of breaking news. Wave 4. This is from a site called Preternia. So I want to give them credit. I could not confirm this, but going to the actual Hasbro Pulse website. I tried to find these on the website and I couldn't, but these images are amazing. So again, this is the wave 4 of this line. So right off the bat, we have this really nice stealth Iron Man. Okay. Which I think is kind of a no-brainer because they can use the same mold as the Iron Man, for instance, that I own that I showed on the previous show. So it kind of makes sense that they would make some variations of existing figures and existing molds. But I do like this, even though I'm not really familiar with the stealth armor. I do like this. Are you very familiar? I'm sure you are, Dave. Are you familiar with the stealth armor version of Iron Man?
I know he's had just about every version of armor, under the sun. So, and I think I remember there being a stealth, like specifically a stealth armor. I mean, the coloring looks about right.
I like it. I think it's really kind of cool. Even though I like the very classic comic book one, and that's the one that I own in my personal collection right now. I do like this variation, and it does make sense to me. It's a no-brainer to do variations of Iron Man when you already have the mold anyway. But this is really cool. I think you would be looking forward to this. They're doing Silver Surfer, and he actually comes with a board.
Oh, that's cool.
Which
Yeah,
that's one of the
really cool.
shortcomings line is that a lot of the figures do not come with accessories, but this one does. This one comes with the board. I think my brother would really like this because my brother was really into Silver Surfer at one time. But it's got the classic artwork for the card back and everything, and this is really cool. I think this is a really neat figure. I think this is going to be a popular one.
For sure, I totally agree. That's cool. And then, did I see it looked like the same one? They've got a U.S. agent.
That's the one I actually thought you would be most excited about. So this is another one where it kind of makes sense, right? Because basically you're taking the Captain America mold, right? And you're just repainting it. It's cool. I think this is neat that they're doing this. And on the heels of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, this is a total no-brainer, right? To do a U.S. agent, classic U.S. agent, a figure. I like this one. And again, one of the shortcomings of this line is that many of the figures do not come with accessories, but this one does. Comes with a shield, just like the Captain America one. And I like the look. I think it's pretty cool. What do you think, Dave? I know you're a U.S. agent fan, so.
Yeah, I dig it. I think that's really cool. I think that's really cool. Yeah.
And again, you can pick this up once it comes out. I mean, these are not out in the stores yet. We're still seeing Wave 1 and 2 right now in stores. Wave 3 out yet in stores. In fact, I haven't covered Wave 3 at all yet. But Wave 3 I know has been out there and other people have been talking about it. So I just wanted to make sure that I was covering this breaking news because, again, I went to the Hasbro Pulse site and I could not find these images on the Hasbro Pulse site. This is coming directly from this Twitter account that apparently somehow gets access to these images early. So I'm definitely going to be looking at him and scrutinizing him more because I think we can get some breaking news from him on a lot of stuff because it seems like he just has images of all sorts of new stuff coming out. David Motz is in the house, and he says, when you're Tony Stark, you need a suit for the right occasion. That's right. When you're Tony Stark, you need a suit for the right occasion. Totally agree, David. Totally agree. And I'm curious what you think about that variation of the stealth armor Iron Man as well. And again, the thing I really like about these is the price point. I don't think you can find figures any cheaper than this right now. You just can't. This is Loki, of course, is sort of a no-brainer to bring in a very popular character, but this is the classic Loki look. This is the classic Loki, which we haven't really ever. I don't know. I guess in the first movie, he kind of had a resemblance to this, but you don't see Loki, in the MCU really using the classic look of Loki. And this is it. This is a classic look. And even the card back, you can see the artwork. Very much the Loki. If you read the comics, this is Loki. This is your Loki, and I like it. I dig it. I think it's kind of cool because Loki is a very popular character in the MCU. So I think it's kind of a no-brainer for them to make a version for this toy line.
And it makes sense too, because you got the Loki series that's getting ready to come out as well.
Exactly.
And a lot of people are excited about that. It makes a lot of sense. And one of my favorite scenes actually in the first Avengers movie is actually a scene between Cap and Loki. And it's that part where Loki is he's got all those people and he's kind of threatening them and they're all kind of like kneeling down and that one man stands up in defiance. It's a really powerful scene. And then Cap shows up and he says, the last time I saw a man like standing over other men, we disagreed.
Right.
And it's a great scene between Cap and Loki. I remember in the movie theater, I was just like jumping with joy watching Cap take on Loki. I thought I was like, wow, I never thought I'd see something like this. It was really cool.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So that's neat.
And then we've also got the Black Spider-Man, suit.
Yeah.
Again, this is kind of a no-brainer because you've got the mold. They have the classic Spider-Man. I have that. Well, I don't have it in my collection anymore because I gave it to one of my daughters, but we do have it in the household. So it makes a lot of sense to go ahead and make another version of this. It's kind of a no-brainer, but it looks good. I think it looks really cool.
And point of order too. One of the I don't know if it's still as valuable as it once was, but one of the most valuable action figures actually from the Secret Wars toy line from back in the day was actually the black suit Spider-Man. And it
Yeah.
was the same thing. It was just a repaint of the other Spider-Man figure, but it was really popular. And for the longest time, I know that's the one that a lot of collectors were actually trying to seek out from the Secret Wars toy line.
Yeah, I know. I remember growing up, in that time period, and the only Secret Wars figure I had was Cap, and I think I still have him somewhere. I would like to find him and show him on the air. He's probably not in very good condition at this point, but I remember the Black Spider-Man became very popular at that time, very, very popular. And I'll be honest with you, I like the classic look. That's what I prefer. But I do like the look of this figure, and I think again it's a no-brainer for Hasbro to do because they've already got the mold. So why not just repaint it and give people something extra that I'm sure that they want. A lot of collectors are going to want this figure. And then the last one we have here, which I think is almost like the best for we saved the best for last, is the Storm figure. This figure is gorgeous. This figure is absolutely gorgeous, and to think that this is basically, like I said, this is basically like having one of those Star Wars Kenner figures from the late 70s or 80s, but this is a Marvel version, and this is Storm, which I think she actually looks better than any Princess Leia figure that I remember seeing growing up in that era. This is a really cool looking figure. This is the classic look of Storm to me. This is the way Storm is supposed to look in my mind, even more so than what I was most familiar with, which is like the 90s cartoon version, kind of like the white outfit. To me, this is really the more iconic outfit to me. I really don't like that outfit as much as I like this one. This one I really like. I think this is the classic look of the character. I think guys for sure will like this. You know what I mean? This is a definitely kind of figure that a guy would like to have hanging on his wall or something like that, or put in his display case. It's just a very, very cool looking figure to me. And I think this is one that, as far as in a speculative standpoint, I think it's also going to almost immediately go up in value. You're going to see it like where, on eBay, it's going for like at least double the price. You know what I mean? Like very quickly. I don't have a date. In fact, in the thread over here on the side, they did respond because people were asking about when we think these are going to come out. And he did respond and say that he has a press release, but it doesn't say when they're going to be coming out. So at this point, we don't know. I haven't seen Wave 3, which I do need to talk about in a future episode. But I haven't seen Wave 3 in stores either. I'm still kind of looking for Wave 1 and 2 stuff. So I haven't seen Wave 3 in stores yet. That is another one that I think we'll be talking about possibly on the next episode. So maybe I'll bring that up, Wave 3. But this stuff is basically breaking news in the collector's world for the Kenner Marvel Legends line, Wave 4.
Yeah, that Storm figure looks absolutely great. And if it is always like they used to do back in the day, where they would, short pack, the female figures, basically meaning it's like you buy a case of figures, right? And they give you so many of this character, so many of this character, so many of this character. The female characters were always the ones that were short packed, meaning you might only get one copy. You might be lucky to get two, depending upon the size of the case of figures that you ordered. If you were, putting them out on pegs, right, or selling them, so this is the kind of figure that would be already kind of, difficult to find because it wouldn't have the same, manufacturing run that the other figures would have. And that is a great looking Storm. Definitely the classic Dave Cockrum, costume. Just really, really, that's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah, I want to mention there are places you can get the boxes. Like I think Entertainment Earth will sell you a box. And I was looking at one of the Wave 1 or Wave 2 boxes, and I remember the assortment basically the way it was. Most of the figures, it was just one in a pack, but then they had I think two of the figures, which I think if I remember right, it's the ones you would think like there's two Spider-Mans, in a box, you know what I mean? Or there's two Hulks in a box or something like that. Then the other characters, it's one. So there are certain characters that are going to be more plentiful, but they're not doing the Jonathan Frakes thing. Anybody who remembers the Galoob Star Trek kind of fiasco of the Galoob figures, which I have some of those in my collection, the Jonathan Frakes Riker figure was just way overproduced. I remember actually going to toy stores, and there would be almost a wall filled of Riker figures. And the infamous story is that it was so bad, and Jonathan Frakes talks about this and how bad this was for his ego. They were giving these figures away at conventions, stuff like that, because they just couldn't sell them. And then the other part of that line is they had other figures, that were super the alien figures, like like Q. They had these two weird aliens that only appeared in one episode of all of Star Trek, and for whatever reason they made them. They had a Ferengi, which of course Ferengi are much more popular, but they had these two random aliens. Those ones were like super hard to find. So it was one of those class blunder. Okay, I'm going to get the collection. Who are they supposed to fight? Because I can't find any of the freaking aliens, But with this line, it doesn't seem to be anywhere near that bad. I think they've again. This is from what I saw with the assortment, because I was looking at one of the if you wanted to buy a box online, they do have like two maybe of a popular character, and then it's one for the rest. So it's not that bad. You know what I mean in terms of assortments.
Yeah, back in the 90s, I had some friends, and what we would do, because we were action figure collectors, and what we used to do back in the day is we would all kick in and buy a case, as a group. And we would, predetermine how we were going to break it up, and depending upon how many there was, there would be those couple of figures where there was just one of this one of that one. And usually there was someone who was a big enough fan that, amongst my circle of friends, I went, well, obviously, so-and-so is going to get this one because they're a bigger fan of that than I am, it was kind of the way it usually worked. We didn't have too many squabbles. I think the only time we had squabbles was I can't remember. I think it was the Fantastic Four line. Maybe I'm getting this confused. I know there was a line in the 90s that actually came with Beta Ray Bill. And that was the first time that there was sort of division amongst my friends, because basically all of us wanted the Beta Ray Bill figure. And there was only one in the case. We opened it up. Like, what the hell, man? There's only one Beta Ray Bill?
Yeah.
What the hell?
Toy companies are notorious for that. And I think they've got a lot better with it. I actually did do an order with Entertainment Earth for the Mandalorian retro line, because I wanted the Cara Dune figure, and that's the only way you can get it, because the Cara Dune figures are completely sold out. So I'm happy to say that they did process my payment. It says that it's going to ship June 3rd. So we'll see. So maybe on a future episode, I'll be able to show those Mandalorian retro figures, which, by the way, are more expensive than these figures. Just throwing that out there.
Well, there you go. Cool. Do you have anything else for the Collector's Corner on the action figure side? Eric?
I think we had a hiccup in the stream there, but I think we're back.
Oh, okay. So, sorry.
Just had
a hiccup. Right. I have something actually I wanted to talk about just briefly on the action figure side. So Funko, this is actually coming directly from the Funko website, but you can pre-order these right now, a lot of different places. One of them is Entertainment Earth. Entertainment Earth should be a sponsor on this show, as much as we talk about them. So Funko actually, they're doing what they're calling their Funko-ween. They're actually going ahead and promoting like a lot of their kind of more Halloween-themed items, it seems like. And one of the things that they announced today, and I saw this kind of popping up at a bunch of different places, if you're a fan of, again, this is the Retro Rogues, right? Like if you're a fan of, fun, retro, sci-fi, action adventure movies, one of the things that Eric and I are obviously into. If you're a fan of the movie They Live, the Rowdy Roddy Piper movie They Live, they're actually coming out with Funko Pops for They Live. And I thought this was really cool. We've got obviously the alien, right? The Obey alien, right? And then we have John Nada, which of course is Rowdy Roddy Piper's character. And you can see he's got the sunglasses and the shotgun, from the classic scene where he walks into the bank and he says, "I'm here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum." So
I love that line. I love that line. Yeah. So the late great, by the way, you got to say that the late great Roddy Piper, because I actually met him at San Diego Comic-Con one year, and he was so gracious and he was so nice, and he was signing people's programs for free and stuff like that. So
that's cool.
He was a class act. I just remember meeting him, and class act.
Yeah, I think Rowdy Roddy Piper, the more I think about it, I think he was probably my favorite wrestler in the old WWF F days.
But you know what you know what's funny about me is I don't remember him wrestling very much because I was too young. You know, like for WrestleMania 1 and 2, like I got them later actually. Like I remember my dad rented them for me on videotape later because I didn't see them live. But the thing is, for me, is his commentating. He was a big commentator, and also he did Piper's Pit. I always used to love Piper's Pit. So he was actually really good as an interviewer and a speaker. You know what I mean? As a commentator. He did a lot of the commentary. You know what I mean? For the matches and stuff. And I have a friend that actually he actually was a wrestler, a professional wrestler, and Roddy Piper actually did do the commentary for one of his fights. You know what I mean? The announcing for one of his fights. So very
cool.
Or matches, I should say.
Right, matches, yeah. But yeah, here you go. So yeah, from They Live, I thought this was really kind of cool. I wanted to talk about it here on the show just because one of the things I talked about, one of the comic books I worked at DC, the New 52, was actually Grifter. And one of the things I loved about being on Grifter with the New 52 was our first editor on the book actually pitched Scott and I on it by saying this is a fun, cool superhero version of They Live in the DC universe, and the fact that Grifter can see and hear the aliens, but everyone else cannot. You know, So
classic film.
Yeah,
it's a great film.
I think so.
We need to review it on the show on one of our Rogues retrospectives for sure.
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
I just don't know how accessible it is. I don't know if I have anything that has it because I don't own it personally, so I don't know if there's any streaming services that have it available right now or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm not. Honestly, I wanted to go back here and show the alien here real quick. I'm honestly not sure. Oh, and check this out. This is kind of neat, Eric. I had forgotten about this. They have like a black and white. See, they got the black and white version, right? You see, he's got the obey.
That color one is like horrifyingly cute. You know, it's like it's cute and then it's horrifying. It's like that's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird to see them in the Funko style, but Funko seems to get every license in the world. You know, it's like that for a lot of stuff. It's like you never got it. They never had a toy line. This is your only option. You know, Funko seems to be at every license. I don't know why nobody else can do that, but Funko seems to have that power, that ability. David Matza made a comment. They live awesome, and he said the alien pop should look like humans, and you get a pair of glasses and you see them as aliens. That would be really cool. That would be a neat toy to somehow design that way that you could actually do that. That would be really cool. Like you put glasses on, you could actually see what they really look like. You know, that would be a neat toy gimmick. I don't know how you would do that, David, but I think that would be really cool. And regarding our sponsorship, actually, Hollywood Jackson's right. Brought to you by Captain Picard, the Retro Rogues Live.
See, that makes me want to put together like a bottle of like Captain Picard rum, like Captain. But the funny thing is, they probably are selling that, so we'd probably.
Well, they have the Chateau Picard, the wine. They had that at the convention. From Chateau Picard, the Picard wine.
I just had this weird feeling somehow we would get in trouble for doing that. Even just trying to have fun with it. But yeah,
we get in trouble for everything, Dave. So,
everything.
So why even fight it at this point?
Lame. Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, very cool.
Are we ready to go into some pop culture news?
Yeah, let's go into some pop culture news. Here in the pop culture news segment, we talk about anything that's happening with pop culture news. At the very least, we hope it's something that you find worthy of discussion. Eric is going to be taking the lead tonight, actually, with the pop culture news because he and I kind of want to talk about all the same stuff. So. Eric's going to give you the news, and I'm probably going to mostly sit back and react like those of you in the Rogues Gallery. Again, if you're in the Rogues Gallery, remember, we want to hear your opinions. Please post your comments from wherever you are, and we will put them live on the show.
Well, there is a lot of news today, a lot of breaking news. There isn't a whole lot we need to say about them, I don't think, but we need to acknowledge them because today was a very heavy pop culture news day. There were a lot of official announcements. And quite frankly, a lot of this stuff isn't stuff that we haven't been talking about and we didn't know about already. A lot of this stuff is stuff we have been talking about, and we already knew this, but it's being confirmed. It's being confirmed. So I'm going to start out with the show, I think, that the modern show that I think both Dave and I like the most, the one that we want to keep supporting. This might be an exception for our Rogues retrospective where we may go back Well, I'm sure we will. We'll go back and we're going to review the next season of Cobra Kai. I think it's a no-brainer, even though we've changed formats a little bit. So Cobra Kai news. This is from The Hollywood Reporter. And the title of the article reads, Netflix's Cobra Kai, bringing back Karate Kid actor for season 4. Villain Terry Silver, played by Thomas Ian Griffith, is coming to Cobra Kai in a new teaser promo. And I wish I could play the teaser for you, but literally Sony gave us a copyright flag on Venom when we did a trailer reaction for that. So I'm just going to show you the image, and there really isn't much more to the teaser, but clearly we know who the back, we see the back of a head here. We know who this is, right? This is Terry Silver. He is back. It is confirmed. This is an official announcement from the show. We all knew it was coming, right? We knew this was coming. I think it was pretty obvious, but there was speculation. There was speculation out there with, all these different theories out there. Everybody's saying that they have their little inside information or whatever. And no, it wasn't going to be Terry. No, it's going to be like his son, or it's going to be this or that, which, by the way, that possibility still exists, that we might have that in addition to this character. But it is officially confirmed, Cobra Kai season 4, that Terry Silver is back. And I'm curious what you think about this, Dave.
Well, and I really like the promo they did too, because he's kind of in almost like silhouette with just that halo, that little light halo kind of around him. And what's really kind of neat is that you think you hear the voices, so it's Terry Silver, but then it gets confirmed when he turns his head and you see the Terry Silver ponytail, right? Like the classic.
That's the image that I actually have up right now.
Yeah, and I and then ends with, and now the real pain begins. Right. I'm very excited for this. And one of the things that's interesting too, I've said this before when we were talking about Cobra Kai, I always had the feeling that with Terry Silver, what they kind of wanted to do was do Seagal in his prime, because Seagal had that ponytail too, at that one point in his career. And he's kind of tall, like he's got just kind of the right kind of build, the right kind of attitude.
That does make a lot of sense. Yeah, I can see that connection as well. That's interesting, because I hadn't thought of it that way before, but once you said it, yeah, I agree with you. That's a pretty cool insight.
So yeah, I'm pretty jazzed for this. I'm pretty excited. I think it'll be really cool. And because it's a show, I think we'll actually learn more about Terry Silver. We did a little bit in last season, I feel like, but I do like the idea of getting to spend a little bit more time with this character and get a better sense for who he is. And like I said, at the end of the last season, this isn't, I don't think this is too much a spoiler, but Kreese needs some backup. So
yes, absolutely. It'll be interesting for me and from my perspective to see if they're going to make Cobra Kai kind of dangerous again, because the one criticism I'm having of where the show has been going is it seems at this point Cobra Kai is always getting their ass kicked and they keep losing people. You know what I mean? Like they keep losing. Like they lost Hawk. So it's like, I don't know. How are they dangerous if they keep losing people all the time and they keep losing the big fights? So I'm hoping maybe there'll be a twist this season that maybe Terry's going to bring some real firepower, like maybe literally. And it's going to change the dynamic and change the whole, because right now, you would think, Johnny and Daniel together would be unstoppable, right? But at the same time, we also know their relationship is very contentious, so it could fall apart at any point, right? So it'll be interesting to see this new dynamic. And I also I always have to say this when I talk about Cobra Kai. This is how you treat a franchise with respect. This is how you advance a franchise, how you even remake a franchise, because Cobra Kai is very different than the Karate Kid movies. It's that whole flip the script thing, right? It's very much Johnny's story. And last season, I argued, was very much Kreese's story. I felt like last season was the most interesting stuff to me, was the stuff about Kreese. And I love those two characters. I'm loving them more than Daniel at this point. And of course, I grew up with Daniel. I grew up loving the original Karate Kid. But I think it's so interesting. These people that are the producers of this show, they have so much respect for this franchise that they're bringing in a character from an unsuccessful version of the franchise. Because by any account, any measure, Karate Kid Part 3 was a bomb. And it was not something that was well embraced by the fans. But these guys have so much respect for the franchise and what they basically call the Miyagi-verse. That's what this has been coined, is the Miyagi-verse. that they're willing to bring in these characters because it makes sense for the story, right? Kreese is in a bad place. This is the one person that might be able to help him, right? Because that's established in Karate Kid 3. So they're taking those good elements from a sort of mediocre movie that some people absolutely hate, but they're bringing in something that makes sense for the story, and they're having respect for the characters, as opposed to, say, the Force Awakens, where they basically erased any reference to the prequels. The only reference to the prequels in the Force Awakens is when they talk about using clones. Remember that there's a throwaway line where they talk about, oh, we should have just used clones. You know, that's the only reference. And I know, because I've read articles about it, that was a specific thing that Disney did that said we're basically like almost erasing the prequel trilogy because the fans hated it so much, you know, so we're not going to even talk about it. This is a bold decision because fans did hate this movie. You know what I mean? But they're bringing this in, and they're bringing it in as a central plot point because they have that respect for the franchise.
Yeah, one of my biggest complaints for Karate Kid 3 is I feel like the subtitle for that movie should have been The Friend Zone Sucks.
I love that. That should have been the subtitle. Karate just friend zoned.
Yeah.
Just that's it. Yeah.
Friend zoned.
I remember as a kid, none of us understood that. I don't remember exactly how old I was when it came out. I wasn't that old. And I just remember us all like, what the hell is this? You know, like,
yeah.
I didn't get it. And I still don't get it. But this is the one part of it that was neat is this idea of Kreese's buddy. And we got to see the backstory in the last season of Cobra Kai. It makes the character much cooler than he was in Karate Kid Part 3. They gave him a compelling backstory. We know why this man feels like he owes Kreese his life, because he does. Because he freaking does. You know what I mean? So it's cool. I'm excited about it, and I'm excited that these guys, they keep doing it. They keep having legitimate respect for the source material, and they never get away from it.
Yeah, now they got to do is in the next season too. Just mention the fact that there was a period of time where Daniel and Miyagi were traveling the world searching for an artifact. That we just need a dropped line to reference the animated series.
I've actually heard that they're considering putting some cartoon stuff there. We'll see. It just depends on how long it goes, right? Because I think the next big thing I would think is they might actually have the next Karate Kid. That might be the next thing that we see next season. Because at this point, what else can you bring out, right? I mean, that would be the only thing that's really left, So
well, and I kind of like the idea. I feel like at this point they've kind of done that with Chosen, so I don't know if they necessarily would need to do that with Hilary Swank's character. But at one point, it did feel natural, since Hilary Swank's character had actually trained with Miyagi, at least in our mind, as far as those who watched the movies most recently, right? It was one of the last people to train with Miyagi. For Daniel to have a connection, with her character, and maybe for the, once a year, the two of them get together and either reminisce or train together, and that's a source for additional information for him, because, she was trained differently than Daniel was, when you just watch the movie.
Take the opposite direction.
So
I would take it in the opposite direction. I think it would be cool to have a twist that she's actually ends up on the Cobra Kai side, and she is Miyagi-Do. I think that would be a neat twist. So we'll see what they have. We gotta get through this next season to see what they're doing with Terry Silver first, and see how this is going to go. But for all I know, that this might be the last season. Who knows? So at this point, you just never know.
Well, I'm going to say is, and now the real pain begins. So I'm pretty excited.
Now, this one I don't think needs a lot of comment, but I did want to make sure we address it because I know you are huge on Moon Knight. We have talked about this, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't even realize that this was not an official thing because we had talked about it like it was. This is a Variety article, and the title reads, "Marvel finally confirms Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight star." And what I thought was funny is I thought this was already confirmed. I didn't think that this was something that people were still
there. There is literally video on YouTube of him training to play Moon Knight, and they're just now confirming that he's playing Moon Knight. Are you serious? Yeah. You mentioned this in the show prep, and I thought this was a joke. Everyone knows Oscar Isaac's playing Moon Knight. My dog Lucy doesn't even, she doesn't watch television. She knows he's playing Moon Knight.
And I just want to put this in context because we have been talking about it a lot. we actually have a graphic for this, right? Moon Knight Rising update. So
Yeah.
we've been talking about this for quite a while. And I just think it's kind of funny that they're finally confirming this, because it's like everybody knew this already. But it was trending on Twitter. It did trend on Twitter. It was actually getting some hype, some juice.
I just think that's crazy that it was actually trending on Twitter. We all know he's playing Moon Knight. But yeah. Well, I'm glad they finally confirmed it. Just a quick shout out here. This artwork here is by myself and James Stone. Thank you again, James Stone, for contributing this amazing piece of artwork. And if you want to see this artwork in a different form and actually enjoy this accompanying story that goes with it, go over to DaveBeatty.com or RetroRogues.com, and you can actually go and download the Retro Rogues fanzine. There's an article in there about Moon Knight, as well as my 10 high most recommended Moon Knight stories that you need to be familiar with to really understand and appreciate this great character. And you can actually see that artwork in a different form, high res on your screen for you to own forever. Because once you download it, you own it forever. So why not? It's free. It doesn't cost you anything.
There you go. Yeah,
we don't even make you give us your email address.
Well, definitely the hype machine for Moon Knight is definitely picking up. So maybe on the horizon we'll get some legitimate big announcements. We'll have to see.
Yeah, but see, the big thing they need to confirm is who in the hell is Ethan Hawke playing. That's the thing they need to confirm, because that's
what I was talking about. Yeah, so we're going to see whether we get some legitimate news or not, because we've been reporting on this for quite a while. And even the article kind of mentions everybody already knew this. It was finally officially confirmed. It's just
like, okay, all right. Yeah, it's funny because, there's I recommended actually in a previous episode, The Collector's Corner, actually an issue of Moon Knight, because some people believe that Ethan Hawke is going to be playing Sun King. But I am still holding out that he's actually playing Jack Russell, the Werewolf by Night. But we honestly don't know who he's going to be playing. So,
yeah, I hear that. And Micah says Lucy may know, but she doesn't care.
That's probably true.
All right. So, what else have we got here? There's been a lot of news. So this is a big one that we have to talk about. We did review the original film. I was actually surprised by this announcement, to be honest with you. I really was. So this is a Screen Rant article, and this is breaking news. A lot of people are talking about this right now. As we speak, there's a lot of other people streaming talking about this. So this is the center of their show. So the title, Joker 2 reporting written by original movie's director. Joker 2 will report Todd Phillips, who directed and co-wrote the original Joker movie, return to co-sequel for Warner Brothers. I have to be honest, I'm a little bit shocked by this. I had actually heard multiple reports that Joker 2 was not going to happen and was never meant to happen, and it was a terrible idea and all sorts of stuff. And I don't even know how I personally feel about this, to be honest with you. We have done a review of Joker in the past, and I do recommend that you check it out. We also, in anticipation of Joker, we did a Joker retrospective where we were looking at all the different media versions of Joker. I think we even did honorable mentions for almost every cartoon. We were able to find a really good source article where we found references just about everybody. But we did all the different live action versions. We did the animated version, just basically all the different depictions of the Joker. And that was before we saw the film, which Dave and I both thought was amazing, absolutely amazing. But one of the things that we brought up in that review, and Dave, actually, you were adamant about this, I felt at the time, was that is this Joker really fit in with Batman at all? I remember thinking the way you put it, Dave, is it's almost like if Batman is fighting this Joker, it's almost like he's just beating up he's beating mentally ill man, basically. He's just beating up pathetic lunatic. It's so I don't know how I feel about this. I kind of thought that Joker was supposed to be a standalone thing, a character study, if you will, kind of its own thing and kind of a neat thing and a special thing, which I think it is. I don't know what Joker 2 is going to bring to the table. Well, what do you think, Dave?
I'll still hold out to my comment. I mean, until we see a trailer and we get a better context for what it is that they intend to do, in a Joker 2, I will still hold on to the fact that if they were to introduce a Batman character into this Joker's universe, that's what it is. You're going to have a multimillionaire with a bunch of, high tech gear beating up a mental patient. So I don't know that I want to watch that movie, and it should be a fairly short movie. The Joker's out running around and Batman shows up and, probably breaks a couple of his bones and smashes in his face, and then the movie ends. It probably lasts about 30 minutes. So
I also want to mention one of the special things about Joker. Okay. And I remember, like, even when my brother came in after seeing it, he'd watched it by himself. He'd gone to the theater and watched it, and he had some issues with it. And he was talking to me about some of his issues. And the thing that I told him, and I tell this to so many people because I feel that this is why the movie is so special, is whatever you might have an issue with, you can question whether that actually happened or not. That's the beauty of the original Joker film. So if you have a specific issue, like with the way Bruce Wayne's father is depicted, you don't know if any of that actually happened. That's what makes the movie special. You don't know what's in his freaking head and what actually happened. There are some things that are more obvious than others, like the girlfriend was clearly a delusion. You know what I mean? But there are other things, like there are other things that are very questionable, especially the grandiose things at the end. It's like, really?
Right.
Was he really the cause of this, or was it just his head, right? His dementia. And there's so many indications that might have been the case. That there are indications the entire movie is just in this guy's head, essentially.
Right.
In the movie really happened, except that he's sitting there in a mental asylum coming up with this crazy story because he's literally batshit crazy, right? Batman, batshit crazy, And the thing is, that's what makes it special. I don't think there's any way to emulate that in a sequel, because I feel like in a sequel, you're going to have to confirm or deny what happened. And it's going to lose what made the movie special, because you're going to have to commit yourself to certain things. I don't think you can make this work twice as a delusion. You're going to have to commit and say, this is delusion, this is reality. Now we have the story going forward. And I think it's going to take away from what made Joker so special. That's my concern.
Well, here's an interesting way to approach this. Do we know that Joaquin Phoenix is coming back for this movie?
That's interesting, because I don't see anything in this announcement that says that. But I would assume he is. I can't. How could they do Joker 2 without him? I don't see how that's even possible.
Because if the movie is about someone that the Joker inspires, it really is Joker 2. It's a second Joker. I've talked about before in comics. They've now done that miniseries. We were talking about it in the lead up to the original film. The three Jokers. They could do three Joker movies and actually focus on three completely different people who take inspiration from the Joker. And maybe none of them are the Joker that we think of in terms of the comics, So it really depends upon how they're going to approach the material. Like if they do that, like if it's someone who's inspired by the Joaquin Phoenix Joker and has a completely different journey and is coming from a completely different place, and it's again, sort of this, interesting, character piece and study into the concept of the one bad day, scenario, but in a different set of circumstances through a different lens. That could be a really interesting and compelling film, as much as the original one was. But if it's Joaquin Phoenix coming back to be the Joker again, like you said, Eric, it diminishes, in my mind anyway, until I see something from it. It diminishes the first one's sort of special nature, because it's sort of like, it's like making Taxi Driver 2. Taxi Driver 2, in a sense, isn't that just, like another Punisher movie? Like, better yet, here's a better comparison. Isn't that just like making another Death Wish movie? And then, don't you kind of see the seams by the time you get to Death Wish 4? Like, shouldn't you have just stopped at Death Wish 1, right? Like, so that's kind of where you're at, and with the Death Wish movies, it just turned into a higher caliber firearms. So by the time that you get to Death Wish 4, it's full on block war, and we've got rocket launchers, right? So you have to be careful how you're going to ramp up what you did before. So like I said, if this film is to take the concept of the Joker and have someone inspired by what he did, because we see the throngs of people, what if all of a sudden we see Joaquin Phoenix on top of the cop car, right? And then the camera pans around and we focus in on one particular individual in the back, and we follow that person from that moment on, and it really is Joker 2, then that would be an interesting idea. So
I think it's an interesting idea, but it's still fundamentally that might happen with it, which is now you've committed to that actually happened. That's my fundamental problem with it, because that I think the beauty of the Joker is that you really don't know what happened. So if you as a fan have an issue with anything, any characterization, any of the events, I can just say right back to you, it didn't happen. It's all up to your interpretation, because you have no idea what was reality and what was not. And the second you the second you commit to anything, you lose that. You definitely lose that. And now you're committed, and now you're basically alienating half the fandom that thought that was a stupid idea to begin with and didn't like that. That's my point. So,
well, I do see within the context of the source material, there's some interesting things you could do. Like, if we haven't already had as many, kind of outings for Harley Quinn so far as we've had, you could even do, Joker 2, Harley Quinn as opposed to Harley Quinn, you know what I mean? And introduce that concept within this universe. Like, how would that be portrayed in this universe? There's a lot of places they could go with this material depending upon how they want to approach it. But I personally do agree with you, Eric, that the more that they confirm, or set in concrete, certain events from the last film, it does diminish the first one a little bit in my mind. And then secondly, like I said, if we're just going to follow Joaquin Phoenix's character again, it just gets into this weird nebulous thing where it's like, well, how, I don't know if I want to see Taxi Driver 2.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I definitely have concerns. I definitely have concerns about this film. So, we'll see, because we do not know at this point which way they're going, how they're going to interpret the character or reinvent the character, if that's what they're going to do. We don't. The article says this is all supposed to be standalone. It's not supposed to be part of the DCEU or whatever you want to call it, the DC's version of the MCU. But then again, it could. You never know. You know what I mean? They could end up somehow tying this into the Flash and the whole multiverse concept or something like that as well. Wow. So we don't know any of that stuff at this point.
See, that's what I'm talking about. That right there, that is Death Wish 4. That's what you just said. Like, it's you can't as much as I love Charles Bronson, as much as I will tell you that the original Death Wish film is a classic in my mind, Death Wish 4 is not a high watermark in cinema.
Now I feel like we have to review Death Wish 4 in a future Rogues retrospective, because I don't think I've ever seen it. So we're like, is it really that bad?
It's schlocky fun, but it's that's the thing. The original Death Wish, I feel like is in my mind is I consider it a classic. But Death Wish 4, that's not just the jumping shark. That's not just the jumping the shark moment. That's actually you're on the back of the shark while it's jumping out of the water, and you have a rocket launcher moment.
There you go. So that sounds pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. That just sounds pretty cool. I think that would be
well, there you go.
So, do we have anything else for pop culture news, Dave? Did you have anything for pop culture news besides what we were talking about?
No, I'm just reacting to what you're talking about, because we're going to cover the same material. So, you had already picked out all the things I wanted to talk about. So,
cool.
Are we good to go ahead and go over into streaming wars?
Yes, I think so. And then this is probably one of the biggest streaming war stories we've had in a long time.
All right, so Here in the Streaming Wars segment, we're not talking about streams like Fish's stream. We're obviously talking about all these amazing video services a lot of us enjoy, such as things such as Hulu, whether it's the free services that you might like. But we're also talking about things like Netflix, and Amazon Prime, all these kind of fun things. This is what we're talking about when we talk about the Streaming Wars. Now, go ahead and give us this one, Eric, because this was big news. Has a lot of potential ramifications, and a lot of people have been discussing this one in a lot of different contexts. So yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, this is big news, just like in the world. This is big business news. This is big news, but it's going to have huge ramifications for the streaming wars and where the streaming wars, I think, is going. So this is a Los Angeles Times article, and the title reads, "Why Amazon Buying MGM is a Watershed Moment for Hollywood and Tech." And of course, they have a picture from a poster of the new James Bond film, which features Daniel Craig, No Time to Die, which of course is highly anticipated. That's probably the most highly anticipated MGM project at this time, which I believe is supposed to come out in October. So this is sort of a game changer. It really is. A lot of people have been wondering when this is going to happen. There have been rumors that Apple was going to acquire a studio, possibly MGM, possibly there'd be some sale from one of the other studios. Sony obviously is one of those players out there that doesn't have their own streaming service. But MGM and Sony both kind of stand out as two of the big studios that do not have their own streaming platform. Now, we've covered that Sony made some big waves because they made some serious deals with both Netflix and Disney Plus. So they kind of split it in the middle. And I still don't even fully understand the ramifications of that or how that works, that they're basically able to do both. They have this deal with Netflix and they have this deal with Disney Plus at the same time. But what MGM has done is basically gone the route of Fox, of the 20th Century Fox Studios, where basically, 20th Century Fox was sold to Disney because they felt that they couldn't be a player in the streaming wars anymore, that they needed to get out of it and focus on the other things they have, such as their sports, news, and of course their actual network. So they decided to get out of the game completely. Now, what's happened here is something very similar, where MGM basically has decided to sell to Amazon. And it really is a huge watershed moment in the entertainment industry. It really is. It's a crazy thing to think that this has happened. But in a lot of ways, it makes sense. Because one of the things that I think from the beginning is we were going to see some sort of consolidation. And we have seen it. We saw it before with Fox. Fox sort of established that precedent. And now we're seeing it with MGM, where basically they're putting their hands up and saying, we can't do this. We don't have the money. And we give up. And they're basically being gobbled up by Amazon, which is one of the largest companies in the freaking world, right? They have everything. In fact, this article mentions that their last big acquisition, of course, was Wholesale Foods. You know what I mean? The grocery chain. I mean, it's just crazy what Amazon does. They do freaking everything. So this is really interesting. Again, this is what we're seeing is this consolidation in the streaming wars, where certain players are deciding they're done, they're out. And for Amazon, the big win, really, I think, more than anything, is the legacy content. Because I think every streaming platform wants to make sure they have a huge amount of legacy content. As much as it's important for them to create new content, because that does bring in people, I think people, a lot of times, they stay for the legacy content because they'll watch the new thing, they'll like it or they don't. But the legacy stuff, they know whether they like that or not for the most part because they've seen it before. And so if they enjoy it, they have that one place they can go to get it. And I think that's probably the best win for them, regardless of what happens with everybody's talking about, James Bond, regardless of what happens there. I think what Amazon really wanted is that legacy content. What's your take on it, Dave?
Dead or alive, your streaming service is coming with me. All right. So. Here's the thing. You're talking about legacy content. One of the things that MGM owns is Can you guess everybody? RoboCop.
Right.
In addition to, I know a lot of people are discussing what's going to happen with James Bond, but this is also Rocky. This is Wizard of Oz. I mean, the MGM library is incredibly dense with like classic films and cult classic films. I mean, I would say RoboCop in my mind is a classic film. All the Bond films are obviously classic films. And it's going to be interesting too to see moving forward what they do, with the access that they now have, to these franchises and properties. It's interesting because I my initial reaction is I think about, if you've ever seen the documentary Empire Dreams, which is about George Lucas creating the original Star Wars films. One of the things that George Lucas talks about at the beginning of that documentary is that he talks about how that the movie studios were being bought by all different kinds of companies. They were beverage companies or whatever, and they had marketing departments, and their marketing departments said, okay, well, our marketing department says you need to make this, so they want to go out and make those kind of movies, right? Because that's the marketing department says to do. And he talks about how a lot of young filmmakers had an opportunity to make a lot of films that under normal circumstances, maybe they wouldn't have had the opportunity to make those films. And that's what I think of when I read this headline that says, why Amazon buying MGM is a watershed moment for Hollywood and tech. It's like they talk about everything cyclical, right? And everything comes back again, right? And that's what it feels like. It's that same idea that Lucas was talking about. Well, a beverage company just bought MGM. I mean, not literally, but you understand where I'm kind of going with this logic.
No, exactly.
So
That's been a trend that's gone back and forth for quite a while. And it's kind of interesting. For instance, we covered last week what had happened with Warner Brothers, which is the opposite, where basically AT&T has basically said, we're getting rid of this and we're going to combine it with Discovery. You know what I mean? And have a media company rather than, a media and, a communications company, so they basically decided that they were going to separate. Which again is also similar to the what happened with Viacom CBS back in the day when they split basically their television and film divisions, which I think was a complete disaster, but it is analogous to what's happening. So this is that other direction. This is that direction of consolidation, and basically where this particular studio has given up and basically said that they can't compete, they can't deal with this anymore. The end of this article said something interesting, because you and I talk about content being king, and I do believe content is king. But this guy, his or her, I'm sorry, I didn't read who wrote the article, but their conclusion was actually that distribution is king. And I think in a business context, they're right. That's basically what happened with MGM, especially with the pandemic and everything like that. I think they realize studios don't have that stranglehold on distribution that they used to have, because there's only like 6 or 7 studios that basically control all the distribution for films in the country. That's it. And if you can't get with one of those studios, you cannot get your film into the theaters. But what's happened to the theater industry? It's been decimated because of the pandemic. It's starting to recover, but it was decimated by this pandemic. So now MGM not having a streaming platform, they had no distribution essentially, right? They had no other way to go unless they made a deal with somebody, like they made a deal with Netflix, they made a deal with Disney Plus. And they decided that they're just not going to do that. They decided they just give up, and they're just going to be part of Amazon now, who does have massive distribution through Amazon Prime, right? Massive distribution. They also have the IMDb channel, which is free, right? They can put legacy content on IMDb, and that's free content. Hollywood Jackson had an interesting comment where he talked about James Bond, the James Bond channel on Pluto, and I wonder how this deal will affect that, because Pluto, of course, is owned by Viacom CBS. So will they possibly take that content away? Now, this article mentions the problem with Bond has always been that it is shared between the estate of the original creator of the James Bond novels and MGM. And that's always been a problem, because the estate is very controlling of what what the studio does with this property. So they don't own it outright. You know what I mean? So that's one of the issues with Bond, and will always be an issue with Bond so long as that's the case. So long as they can't wrestle full control of the franchise away from the family, basically the family of the author who created the franchise in the first place. So there's definitely a lot going on. But just as Dave, you were talking about RoboCop, because this article just briefly mentions RoboCop. One of the other things this article briefly mentions, and I was getting into this actually with PJ from Orville Nation on Twitter, is Stargate. Stargate is owned by MGM. And one of the things I'm really curious as a Stargate fan is what implications this might have for that franchise. They've been trying to bring back Stargate for a long time, the fans and the creators. In fact, on Orville Nation, he regularly has one of the producers, one of the showrunners from the later seasons of Stargate SG-1 on his show, because he also produced Dark Matters, which PJ has a Dark Matters show where they focus on Dark Matters. And it's interesting for me to kind of think what might be happening, or might be happening very soon behind the scenes with this deal, because I think the most basic problem that MGM had as far as resurrecting Stargate, whether they went with a reboot concept, a sequel concept, or they went back to the movies, which, by the way, a lot of fans don't talk about that. There are three options when it comes to Stargate. I think most of the fans are like, oh, we want a continuation of the SG-1 universe, that stuff, Atlantis, all that stuff that was interconnected. That's only one option that the studio has, and it's always only been just one option. In fact, there was a time they were talking about doing bringing back the film franchise, which is separate from the television franchise, different creators, different directions. And then, of course, there's always the thing that Hollywood does, which is they just reboot, reimagine, remake, you know what I mean? And they just clean the slate, new actors, maybe with new characters or the same characters, but now different actors playing them. So there are three options, not to mention the option of whether they go theatrical or they go with a series. So that brings you up to like 5 possibilities there. I mean, there's all sorts of different directions that they might go. And at this point, we have no idea what's going to happen. But one thing we do know is that I think MGM didn't move on anything with Stargate because of money. They didn't have the capital. They had too much freaking debt. They just did not have the capital to make any of those projects work. That's why those projects never happened, because they didn't have the money. I mean, MGM just came out of bankruptcy, I think, in 2010. And it has not been a healthy company ever since. It's riddled with debt. That's the real game changer here, is because Amazon has boatloads of money. Amazon has more money than most countries. You know what I mean? It's insane how much money Amazon has. So I think it's only a matter of time before we see something of Stargate resurrected, because they've got all this IP. They want to use it. They want to do something with it. They now have a studio, which is something they've lacked. Amazon doesn't really create content. What they do is they get other people to produce content for them, and then they put it on their platform. That's basically the way Amazon Studios works, right? Now they have their own studio, and they can make their own stuff, if they want to. So it seems to me it's just a matter of time, but I don't know which route they're going to go. And I don't think there's any indication at this point which route they're going to go. So I would say be cautious, Stargate fans, because sometimes you got to be careful what you wish for, because it may not be what you're hoping for, because there are lots of other possibilities besides the one I think you want.
Well, here's the thing that's really interesting as you're talking about this, I hadn't considered with Amazon. When you talk about Stargate, when you talk about RoboCop, when you talk about things like Rocky and James Bond and Wizard of Oz and all these other properties that are a part of the MGM brand, right? The MGM studio. One of the things that's interesting that I'm sure someone has brought up, but as I begin to think about it, it's even more interesting to me, is, for example, when Stargate, the show, was on television, there was a lot of Stargate merchandise and different things that they were selling at conventions. Stargate was a very lucrative brand. When you want to talk about the books and the comics and the statues and the collectibles and the props and all the things that went with Stargate. And then you start looking at these other things like RoboCop, for example. There is a lot of room because Amazon is in the business of selling people things like merchandise, correct?
Right.
It only makes sense for this company, right, to basically own some of these franchises, because when you start looking at it from a business standpoint of, well, now that we own Stargate, well, we can sell Stargate t-shirts, and we could do new Stargate, audio dramas on Audible. And I mean,
True.
it's like you start beginning to contemplate, like, for example, they do a lot of stuff with merchandise, like t-shirts and stuff. Like, the fact that Amazon now has control of some of these different franchises and properties is pretty amazing when you start considering what they can do, because what they're known for doing to begin with, let alone the concept of new productions.
Right.
Just the fact that they could take some of this legacy stuff, and even if, honestly, Eric, even if they decide not to revisit SG1, for example, but they go, but hey, let's bring some of the original cast members back, and we'll do some new audio dramas for Audible only exclusives. Like, there's all this amazing stuff that they could do. So it's going to be really interesting to see what directions they choose to take some of this stuff. I mean, for example, like, I'd love to hear an audio RoboCop, news story, with Peter Weller, reading the story, and maybe giving us some of Murphy's inner dialogue, for example, which we've never really had before. There's a lot of potential here for how to revisit even legacy content, whether they decide to do a live action theatrical production or a television based production or not. So it'd be interesting to see what they choose to do. Let's hope they choose to do some interesting things, because there's a lot of potential here the more I think about it. I mean, as a content creator myself, I'm having all kinds of crazy fun ideas I think would be cool, but of course I own none of this stuff, so I can't do any of it.
Exactly. So we will see. Time will tell. Time will tell. But as much as I think there are some good possibilities out there, I also think there's possibilities people don't really consider, and you may not be very happy with the end result. I'm just putting that word of caution out there, because I could see them doing some really weird things. I really could. So we'll just have to see what they actually end up doing. If, like, for instance, I haven't heard a lot of great buzz about the Lord of the Rings series, so we'll see what happens with that. But we'll see. We'll see what they actually do with this stuff. It would be nice to have some nice new Stargate toys. You know what I mean? That would be really cool. There's even they've done some pretty neat Rocky toys in the past too. It would be nice to see some new stuff come out. But we just don't know what their actual plans are for this stuff, other than, they're going to put these movies on Amazon Prime. That's the bottom line, right? That legacy content that they're going to have, so they can expand their library. So they have all that stuff, and you'll be able to stream it if you're an Amazon Prime member, right? So.
Yeah, that's true. But I can already tell you right now, if we get a new RoboCop story, and it's a new audio drama on Audible, read by the man himself, I'm gonna say is take my money. There you go. I don't say that very often on the show.
There you go.
Yeah, Peter Weller returning as RoboCop and reading like a really cool, cyberpunk, future RoboCop story. Like, I'd be totally down for that. I think that would be really interesting. So
yeah, it would
that's
be
an
really
interesting
cool
project for you.
But
I don't.
They would be
think
cool if they did some stuff like that. We'll just have to see if that's the direction they decide to go or not.
I think it'd be cool. All right.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Do you have anything else for this week's installment of the Streaming Wars?
No. This is the big thing. I mean, this is, like I said, this is a big moment, and it's definitely, this will be a battle long remembered in the Streaming Wars. Goodbye, MGM.
Yeah. That's crazy to think. Yeah, and it makes you wonder, how's the casino going to be affected? The MGM Grand. What happens there?
Well, they're separate companies. They divided a long time.
Oh,
ago.
they are? Okay,
yeah, they are separate companies. They broke apart years and years ago, probably decades ago. Actually, they broke apart. So initially they were the same company, but it's one of those splits, just like Viacom and CBS at one point. You know what I mean? These companies split, and then they come back together and they split again, and all that kind of stuff. But the resort stuff is completely separate.
The only reason I was asking is because I know they have a lot of the franchise branded stuff as a part of the MGM, so I was just curious. So
yeah. But
All
they've
right.
been
Well,
a
there you
separate
go.
company for a long time now.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, if that's good, I think we'll just go ahead and go to the outro.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Very cool. So I want to thank you for hopefully watching or listening to this episode of the Retro Rogues Live. Again, this is another thrilling installment of the Collector's Corner. My name is Dave Beatty. I have been one of your hosts. If you want to support the Retro Rogues Live, we want you, number one, please tell people about the show. Please share the show with people you think might enjoy it. And lastly, please subscribe to the show wherever you are, whether you're on Facebook or Twitter or Twitch or whatever. If you can subscribe, if you can share, please do that. We greatly appreciate your support. And along those same lines, if you would actually like to support the show out in the public, now that we're going back out into the world, you could wear a really cool Retro Rogues Live t-shirt. You can get that over at kirbytees.com. That is my t-shirt company. You can find all kinds of fun Retro Rogues Live t-shirts over there to check out. If you purchase one, we would greatly appreciate your support. But enough about that. I want to thank Eric Alexander, my great co-host, for being here on the show, providing his unique perspective, as always, bringing us all the interesting insight as well as the information and the news. Greatly appreciate that. Eric, please tell the folks who'll be watching or listening at home where they can learn more about you on the interwebs.
Well, I'm most active on Twitter. You can find me there at BassGod14, at BASSGOD14. My DMs are always open. I'm always open to show suggestions, rumors, anything that you hear out there in the world of collectibles and the world of movies, television shows, obviously streaming wars news, any of that kind of stuff. You can always hit me up there. BassGod14 is also the official YouTube. That's also the official Twitch. So if you comment on there, more likely than not, I am the one that's going to be responding to you. Definitely encourage comments. And as Dave said, please like and share our content. We are trying very hard to grow the show. That's one of the reasons we've changed formats. That's why we're here on Thursday as opposed to Wednesdays that we used to be. And along those same lines, we do have a show coming up on Sunday, and that is our Rogues Retrospective show, centered, Rogues Retrospective show, where we're going to be reviewing Terminator 2. So that's going to be exciting. I do remember we had a glitch this last Sunday, and there were a few of you that showed up on the stream where I went on just to explain what was going on and that we weren't going to be able to come on that day. So I hope there is some anticipation for our Terminator 2 review. And of course, we'll also be keeping our eyes out for any additional pop culture or streaming wars news. Although it seems like, what else could they say at this point? There's just so much news that dumped today. It was kind of crazy, which is why the show went a little bit longer than we generally like to do. But still, there was a lot of news to cover today. And again, please check us out on Sunday. We will be reviewing Terminator 2. That's at noon Pacific time. We will be reviewing Terminator 2. And we do have a couple of comments here in the Rogues Gallery. Jane says, very informative and enjoyable show. Thank you, Jane. You're too kind. Hollywood Jackson says, great show, guys. Again, Hollywood, way too kind. Thank you very much for all your support. And David Mott says, thanks for the flashback tonight. You see them on the street. You watch them on TV. You might even vote for one this fall. You think they're people just like you. You're wrong. Dead wrong. They live. And with that, we will give David Motz the last word.